way to go.
Robert Kennedy and Trump on the
I love it.
same stage.
That was at our event. That was not too far from here. We're in an undisclosed location, but we were in Glendale, Arizona, which is, of course, why I'm wearing the shirt. It's amazing. I mean, it's the first Kennedy ever to endorse a Republican. Bobby Kennedy, who ran for the presidency as a Democrat, now endorsing Donald Trump. It's so profound that if we had an honest media, this would be the biggest story for like a month or two.
I think it is, and I think they're doing their best to make it seem like it's not, because you could hear the electricity coming from the crowd. It's truly, and also I've already had conversations with people that are like, okay, cool, like I do like what Robert Kennedy brings to the table. So this is a huge win for Trump, because there's a lot of people that believe the fake news and they believe what they've made him out to be. The gospel talks about this. If they don't assassinate you, they assassinate your character. And I think this did help Trump in a way where people like us that actually care about, you know, the ground and the sky and everything that's going along with it, and we don't believe in the fake news. It's good to have that reassurance that his heart is in the right place. So I want to jump into that. How is it that we're going to make America healthy again? That's a great thing to say.
Yeah.
But what are we doing?
You know, I'm far from an expert on this. I encourage people to dive super deep into it. I mean, I've read probably 30 or 40 books on it, and I live it. But it goes a lot deeper than this. And that book, Good Energy by Callie and Casey Means, has really gone viral. It's the #1 book in America. And what they are able to pinpoint in that book, amongst the other community of literature, is that we have a chronic disease epidemic in this country that is far bigger than like systemic racism or climate change or all the other stuff that they have us worry about. And Bobby Kennedy, to his credit, has been pinpointed on this like a heat-seeking missile for the last couple decades.
And it ruined his reputation.
Yeah, so there's two types of illness. There's acute and chronic. So in America, we have the best acute care on the planet. So if you have a heart attack, a gunshot wound, or a broken leg, we can treat you really well, really quickly, and efficiently, and humanely. And no one doubts that. In fact, we're the envy of the world when it comes to acute care. We are one of the worst in not just the Western world, but in all countries on chronic care. Yeah. That is autoimmune issues, Lyme disease, ulcerative colitis, celiac disease, where your body is attacking itself, and it's more than just a pill. It is a lifestyle issue. Mostly, basically, it's a metabolic dysfunction, right? So your body is not optimizing correctly, and those are byproducts of usually either environmental contaminants or pollutants, and or what you are putting in your body, such as diet, lifestyle, sleep, drugs, alcohol. So what Bobby Kennedy argues is that we are actively poisoning our children, actively poisoning the country from the food that we give our kids, from the lifestyle that we elevate and that we do not emphasize enough. And finally, and most importantly, is that our kids are not given a fair shot to be able to succeed if by the time they're 15, they're overweight or obese. So in Japan, this is an amazing study, 3% of Japanese youth are overweight or obese by the age of 15. 50% of American youth are overweight or obese by the age of 15. Something is profoundly wrong with how we are feeding our kids and what we're telling them to do. And it can be as simple as the way we do our farming, the pesticides that we put on our fruits and vegetables, but also if you just look at a typical Lunchables box and what we give our kids in cereal, we are putting things that have been proven in peer-reviewed studies that do not pass the litmus test in Canada, in Germany, in Europe. They do not allow their kids to eat this stuff. We are actively poisoning our kids. So we can start with ending regulatory capture and then saying we just want the same food guidelines as Canada. We want the same food guidelines as Japan. I can go deeper if you guys want.
No, I do.
But actually, I think this is actually one of the biggest issues facing humanity right now.
What's his plan in order to kind of help these farmers all around America completely fix the soil? Because that's going to be a really big job.
Yeah, it's very complicated.
And I don't mean to intrude that, but when I hear that, I also think there's people that are getting paid big bucks to poison us. How is he going to get to that? If we're talking about the root and the soil, we got to get to the wolves and the sheep clothing.
Yeah, so we have to go even more elementary, unfortunately. We first need to make sure that our medical literature and our data is not corrupted by people that have conflict of interest. So,
we learned this in COVID, it was.
Yes, and so I know that the soil seems like it's the foundational issue. We first need to build political consensus and medical consensus that we are being actively poisoned. Because here's the problem, guys. It's so obvious to us, right? We see what's in these cereals. We see xanthan gum and blue dye 22 and red dye 17, right? And we see that Reese's peanut butter cups literally have a derivative of petroleum in them. Legit, you guys can fact check it.
No wonder it's the bomb.
It explodes in your mouth.
I'm so sorry.
Some foods are literally like 1% away from being plastic. And
Correct.
even like now kids, like toddlers, parents have been taking their kids off of like, all the different dyes, and they see behavioral changes. Like kids are losing their minds, throwing tantrums, and then they change their diet and they can act normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying that cereal causes autism, but I will say that some ingredients in cereal have been shown to show attention deficit disorder, learning and memory focus issues. And other countries do not have the same rates of autism that we do have in this country. It's about 1 in 22 in California now. 1 in 30 kids in the country have autism or some sort of issue on the spectrum. It was 1 in 30,000 25 to 30 years ago.
Wow.
So something has changed. What has changed? Let me tell you, is that the cigarette companies and the addictive companies, as they were starting to get sunsetted and Congress is going after them, they shifted their focus literally to food. And do you notice how addicting food has become? It's not just that it nourishes you. You know this when you go to Europe. You feel full, but you feel good and content.
Yeah.
Our food is different. Our food, like, you want to have that extra Butterfinger. You need to have that extra Snickers. You need to have Taco Bell.
Fries do that. Oh, you just keep going.
Of course, though. And there again, you reflect on it. Again, I don't eat any of that food anymore. Praise God. I've been I feel like I'm an former alcoholic. I am 2 years sober from Chick-fil-A
Plastic
fries,
food.
right?
But it's sad.
No, but it's
true.
It's
though.
very
true.
similar. By the way,
so
I'll
true.
just be very clear. If you're having a beer a night, or like if you had to choose, okay, I'm gonna have a glass of red wine at night, which I'm not a drinker, not a fan of, or I'm gonna go have Taco Bell every day. I would much rather have you have a glass of red wine than have you have Taco Bell. I mean, it's not even close, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you are being actively poisoned by the ingredient profile, but also it just from look. There's 3 types of food. I don't need to go too deep in this unless you guys want, right? There's proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. And another thing that Trump can do and that Bobby Kennedy will do before we even get to the soil, we need to blow up the food pyramid. The food pyramid is pure propaganda. So we were raised, believing that you should have foundational bread, wheat, rice, potatoes. Ain't wrong. So out of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, what if I told you you only need proteins and fats to survive? If you have no carbohydrates the rest of your life, you're perfectly fine. If you have no proteins, you die. If you have no fats, you die. Now, we think fats is a bad thing, but there are many different types of fats. They're avocado oil, olive oil, almonds, right? I mean, those types of fats are very, very good for you. And of course, protein, needless to say, without protein, you can't have muscle mass and you die. So what we've been told, though, is that heavy carbohydrate diet, which then makes you incredibly insulin resistant, it increases and spikes the type 2 diabetics, the likelihood of profile in this country. And we're wondering why our kids are so obese or overweight, because we have literally nuclear bombed their metabolic system from a young age, where we are sending them these sugar high type concentrated foods, and they're not able to process or digest them correctly. So what can you do to answer your question? We need to blow up the food pyramid, and we need to basically say this. It needs to be more like a food circle, which is you can have maybe 10% of your diet should be carbohydrates, right? 30% of your diet should be proteins, and then 60% of your diet should be healthy fats. Cashews, pecans, almonds, olive oil, avocados, so on and so forth.
Yeah. I think that would
Sorry,
be...
I could talk about this stuff forever.
No,
Yeah.
It really did. Like your ability to hold on to this information and regurgitate it the way you do is.
But the health stuff I live, which I don't get. I'm glad we're talking about this. One of the reasons why I'm so excited to try to get Donald Trump in the White House is that we'll finally have a beachhead. Because let me tell you this: Bobby Kennedy reached out to the Kamala Harris campaign and said, "Hey guys, we're actively poisoning our society. Most importantly, our kids. Can we meet about this? This shouldn't be a political issue. Can I please meet with you?" She is bought by food lobbyists. She's bought by war lobbyists, she's bought by abortion lobbyists, and she's bought by food lobbyists, amongst many others. The food lobby gets almost no attention, right? When you think of lobbyists, you probably think of like war lobbyists, right? Or drug company lobbyists. You don't think of lobbyists for Nestle. You don't think of lobbyists for companies that are literally trying to tell your elected leaders, vote no on trying to remove poison from your kids' Snickers. I mean, that is as evil as it gets, right? And we're talking about Kellogg's cereal, okay? So Kellogg's cereal, which was started in Battle Creek, Michigan, has 2 different types of cereal. One for the Canadians, which are not colorful dyes, or the ones for Americans that are full of colorful dyes that create attention issues and potentially create autistic type behavior. And they refuse to make the Canadian ingredient profile because kids like the colorful ones better, and it sells more and it's more addictive. We as a country are prioritizing making money and profit above the well-being and the health of our kids. And so Donald Trump has made this a primary focus of his campaign. Bobby Kennedy is a co-chair of the transition team. I think this is non-political. And by the way, you know what's so funny? This used to be a liberal type issue. People on the left used to care about nutrition, health, wellness, vitality, a lot more than conservatives have. And we've seen this inversion. And I'm happy to say that Donald Trump and Bobby Kennedy have this alliance to try to make our country healthy again. I'll make one final thing. We will not heal our divides politically. We will not be able to solve the suicide epidemic, the depression problem, the anxiety problem, the medication problem, if we don't get back to first principles of how we are actively poisoning our metabolic condition on a daily basis.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's the root to everything. It's how we can
Bingo.
heal ourselves. It affects absolutely every aspect in our life. So thank God for Trump and RFK doing that. And it is kind of crazy when you think about it that the liberal side doesn't want to tap into that portion of things, you know what I mean, of our well-being.
And I think deep down they want, I mean, look, they're the ones that like shop at Whole Foods, right? And I mean, this is the only explanation. They are so blinded by their hatred of Trump that they will not allow themselves to even agree on the most agreeable political issues. And I think that's really sick.